your login name is the same as what it was for your basic class. It may be a different password. I don't know. But I posted that information for you guys. I am not finished with my notes for the Module 1 review. So I will get that worked on and finished today. If anybody needs help with testing, I will be available tomorrow for help. You're welcome to email me this afternoon, set up a time if you need. And then on Wednesday, I have made time so that Wednesday and Friday we'll wrap up the class. The last 30 minutes will be testing review stuff. So we could do it as a group. If anybody has questions that pertain to everybody, I'll be available for that. So because there's a lot of, as you guys saw, and I love the fact that you guys work together as a group. But there was questions as I went through here that I wanted to make sure of from the standpoint of what the book said. So there was probably about, as I listed, over 10 questions that I had. So I'll make sure that we get that taken care of and you guys are ready to go for your testing. So let's jump into today's session. And like I said, we wrap up our hard floor. By the way, I also posted the video from Friday's class, was posted just a little bit ago. So that's there as well. So we record today's session and we'll get going here.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so today in our wrap-up discussion on hard floor, we're going to be discussing some of the others in hard floors. We've spent most of our time talking about resilient flooring, concrete flooring. Today we'll also spend over half of our classroom time about wood floors. Because if you happen to work with a school district, a university, you will likely be involved with wood floor maintenance or restoration. So we'll deal with both of those today. And then we'll just touch on as well some of the other stone floors. So I wanted to wrap up with the stone floors first and kind of cover those issues. So let's jump into that discussion. And if you look into your Google Classroom, I've also posted these videos for you to be able to access. So let me share my screen. We'll get right into that. So we begin by looking at marble floors because I wanted to, the concept of the marble floor polishing and granite floor polishing is very similar. Last week, we had a lesson that we discussed concrete floors, how we deal with the concrete. And concrete is becoming that floor that is growing by leaps and bounds. The process of dealing with marble and granite is very similar. There are some differences. So I wanted to share with you that. And to that extent, also share some videos. In these videos, I am going to mute their sound because basically all they did was put background music. So I'll be able to explain the process, and then we'll discuss that. So the first is related to grinding of marble floors. What I want to explain here is this. Typically when marble or granite is installed, especially new installations, most of the time the tile is already been honed or polished in the plant that it's at. And it's a lot easier to do in the manufacturing plant. But inevitably, just like with concrete floors, no floor is perfect that it's being installed into. And in some cases, what will happen is in the installation process, because marble and granite don't typically have grout lines, they are installed where each tile is right up next to each other. What can happen is something called lippage, where one edge of the floor is higher than the other. And when that occurs, then typically the floor needs to be ground down and repolished. That's a major problem. I'll show you a brief video on this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because the reality is this is not something you guys would have to deal with. If there is a lippage issue and it becomes a safety hazard, then you typically want to get an expert who this is what they do. So you would call out a contractor who would do the work of grinding the floor. The other video we'll show is more of polishing. And just like any floor, floors are going to get scratched. Somebody drags something across it, leaves marks, or it gets worn down just because of traffic. Marble is a softer stone than granite, so it tends to wear a little bit more uneven than granite does. So from that standpoint, when that happens, how do you restore it? That's what we'll spend more time focused on. So let me share with you this video. And again, I'll mute this background sound from them. And this is a company who deals with floor treatments, especially stone floors. And they'll talk about using their specific piece of equipment here. So what he's showing right now is the gloss. And that little meter there, start it, I'll pause it right at that spot, is called a gloss meter. And these specialty meters can be used on any kind of stone floors. This has such low gloss that basically it's completely dull. It has a 1 on the gloss meter. The higher the number, the higher the gloss. Typically you'll see numbers upwards of 90 or better. You've seen, if you guys go into some department stores, you've seen granite floors that have such high gloss that you can literally see the reflection of some of the displays and so forth in the flooring. So to restore this and deal with some of these issues, they're going to set up a piece of equipment that's designed for grinding the floor. It looks much like a floor buffer, but it's a weighted machine, more like a concrete polishing machine. In fact, this machine typically can be used for that same process with just a different set of diamonds. So you'll notice it has the 3 heads. Let me pause it for a second. Mark, your question.
And speaking about the glossiness,
Yep.
It was one of the questions in the test what I'm asking. Does the process when you're seeing the floor through the gloss, is that considered transparency, or are they considered that clearness?
What question number is that, Mark?
It is 69. The ability of an applied floor finish to allow an undistorted view of the floor surface below is called transparency, clearness, film clarity, or window look.
I believe the answer, and I made a note here to find it in the book, is actually, I believe, film clarity, because it's it deals with the application of floor finish. So I want to say it is film clarity, but I will confirm that, because I did make a note that was one of the ones I wanted to confirm.
Yeah, it's one I could not find for the life of me.
Yeah. So a little bit different thing when it comes to gloss on stone floors versus a floor finish. A floor finish achieves its gloss because of the coating that has been put on the floor. A stone floor achieves its gloss through a polishing process, making that floor as flat and smooth as possible. And the more it's polished up, the more it reflects. It has such fine scratches that you can't even see them. And as a result, it has just this beautiful, flat, smooth appearance like glass. And they'll call it, for stone floors, a glass look. Whereas on a resilient floor, we talk about it more of a wet look because it looks like there's a coating on the floor. So there is a difference. So you'll notice here, they're going to show their diamonds that they use. Again, very similar concept to what we dealt with concrete. They have a diamond disc that's going on the floor. A little bit different though, because these are angled at such a way that there's a slight bevel to the way the diamond is set up on the tooling. And that's because we're dealing also with the potential for lippage issue. We want to make sure that if there is a lip, that what's happening is the diamond is grinding it off smoothly and creates a nice smooth transition so there is a perfectly smooth floor. Now, very similar to concrete polishing, it's simply a matter of utilizing water. But because this is marble dust, one, it's not nearly as hazardous because it's more of a natural stone. It doesn't have a lot of additives in there like cement does. Therefore, it's a much safer product to deal with as far as disposal. Still probably not a great idea to dump down the drain because the minerals will build up in the drain. So a lot of times separation products are good just to kind of make sure we're dumping not stone down the floor. But this is just a process of going through with different diamond grits, very similar to concrete polishing. The reality is we've been doing granite and marble polishing for a lot longer. In fact, background history on the polishing of stone floors. In much of Asia, they have used stone floors for years, far longer than what we would have been using here in the United States. So they became experts at the process of grinding and polishing of stone floors. So again, just changing the grit, consistently going up in grit with the diamonds that they're using. And we'll jump ahead so you guys can get an idea of, as this process continues, you see the wet look to that floor and that depth of gloss. And they, at these final stages, they've moved to a diamond impregnated pad that has a grit. Typically in marble polishing, they'll go up to about a 10,000 grit. So as a result, you could see the imagery. You could see that reflection in the floor. They'll simply take a cleaner to clean the floor off. At the end, they'll do, looks like one last thing with a white polishing pad to finish it up here with their process. Yep. And so that cleaner is going to remove any residue on the floor. And same time, it's going to give it a little bit of final polish and evenness. Yeah, see how it wets out on there? That's the stone itself, which is really nice with marble, because if you have a marble floor, they are so easy to maintain. And an example of this, in downtown Sacramento, there's a couple buildings that have some beautiful looking floors. One of my favorites is the California EPA building in downtown Sacramento. It's right over by, I believe that's Cesar Chavez Park. You see how the water just wets out on it? Easy to pick up. Gorgeous looking floor. So these are beautiful floors. If you are tasked to maintain a marble floor, biggest thing I would say, keep the sand and soil off just like any floor. Keep it clean. A neutral cleaner is sufficient. Now look at that gloss reading, a 98. And you could see it. The depth of gloss was just gorgeous in that. But that's the process if they were doing a floor that was somebody coming in and actually having to resurface it. Now, what happens if you have a marble floor and it just gets scratched up and worn down? How do you do this? So this second video is, again, it's from an Asian company out of Singapore, and it shows the process of using a swing buffer and just creating a paste. And our book talks about there's 3 different methods of restoring of marble floors: grinding, polishing, or crystallization. If we use polishing, which is what they're doing here, they'll use a slightly acidic, it's called oxalic acid, in combination with a floor pad system to polish the stone. And it's also got the diamonds as part of that system. So the oxalic acid creates a little bit of a chemical reaction, as well as for it to allow that stone to be polished nicely. The crystallization uses a separate system that, instead of using these kind of pads, it might use something like a steel wool pad that creates a crystallization effect. I'm not a big fan of that, but it's also very popular. So this one is the one I wanted you guys to see, though, because this is a great method. So here on their gloss meter, it has a reading of a 9. Again, very low. We saw a reading of 1 on the other one. This is very typical of what would happen. So in this case, they're using a pad holder with special diamond pads. They're going to put water on the floor and begin with just polishing it, but they're going to use this with just a traditional rotary low-speed buffer. That's going to be the process. Pretty easy to deal with. Once they begin scrubbing it, they'll do it for about a minute with just water. And then once they've done that, then that water, they're going to add a powder to. And that's that oxalic acid that they're going to add. So they're going to create a little bit of a slurry here. In this case, they're picking it up, and they'll put that powder down with water. And you'll see here. And a lot of different companies have different marble polishing powders that do this. They don't need much, but the powder is applied directly on the floor, and they don't want a lot of water. They was simply creating a little bit of a paste. So in this case, it was a ratio, and they had a certain amount of water to a certain amount of powder. But notice how it'll create that paste, a little bit of a slurry paste. And this is what, in combination with those diamonds, is going to
I'm not doing the
start to bring that gloss
my
up.
custodial thing.
Oh, cool.
Multiple passes over the floor. This floor doesn't have a lippage issue. You notice, though, it also doesn't have much of grout lines. The stone is butted right up next to each other. So they'll go back and forth over it multiple passes. Overlapping each pass. You notice the gloss is starting to improve as they come up. So now we can start to see a clear reflection. You can see the light there and the definition of that light. Because it wasn't at the gloss that they wanted, they're going to keep it going. They just put a little bit more water, continue polishing it. Now look at the clarity. That definition is even more so. So remove that residue. And now look at the gloss meter reading. 90. Very nice. Tony, you had a question.
Those tiles look pretty bonded together. I mean, there's no issue of that water penetrating into those cracks because, yeah, I'm not seeing much like grout in there.
Yeah, and what they use is it's not really a grout. There is, it is put into a mortar mix, and then there is a type of compound that they put in between it. In some cases, they won't put anything between it because it's so tightly buttered up next to each other in the installation. And it's for the purpose that it's supposed to be almost like one complete slab of floor. But unfortunately, you can't do that. There's just not big enough slabs to do that with. You'll generally speaking see slabs or tiles anywhere from a 12-inch square up to maybe a 2 foot by 2 foot square. You won't see much bigger than that. I think the largest I personally have seen is a 3 foot maybe square. And I want to say the ones at Cal EPA are 2 foot or 2.5 feet square. So
what's the thickness on those, Dave?
So typically those are about 5/8 inch thick, maybe even a little thicker. So it's thicker than a piece of ceramic tile or porcelain tile that are generally speaking thick enough. And in the polishing process, you're not taking off much material as it's honed and polished. So from that standpoint, like on concrete, you can remove up to a 1/16 of material real quickly in the grinding process of concrete. Marble, you'll never be able to remove that much, or granite. And granite's even harder than marble. So, you know, as we talked about concrete, how we said if the concrete is soft, we use hard diamonds. If it is hard, we use soft diamonds. So with marble, because it's a softer stone, we'll use a harder set of diamonds. Same thing, granite is a much harder stone, so we use soft diamonds for that. And it's, when we talk about hard or soft diamonds, we're talking about the metal or resin that holds the diamond onto the tooling. Okay, so, you know, generally speaking, this is the process of dealing with these floors. And marble and granite are very similar. The process is pretty much the same for gloss restoration. You'll find that you will more likely have to restore gloss on a marble floor than you will a granite floor. Granite floors are so hard that they don't scratch real easily. So it's not often that you have to go in and do it. You may have to if the customer is careless. I had a high-rise building in downtown San Francisco about 4 years ago that we were dealing with that had granite floors, and they had dragged equipment, furniture across the granite floors, and it was pretty heavy furniture that they just really did a number on the granite and left these scratch marks on it. We tried dealing with it, and we found that the soft diamonds, lots of passes over it, just being very slow with the process, worked best. And we were able to get it out and restore the gloss. So it just takes time. All right, so that's good about those two. Our book also talks about terrazzo floors. And just to understand what terrazzo is, terrazzo flooring is a floor that is, it's got marble chips in it. And typically it's put into a mix of either cement or a mix of epoxy or resin. So a lot of the newer terrazzo floors are stuff that is a resin terrazzo, and generally speaking, those terrazzo floors need a sealer put on them. A sealer different from a traditional acrylic floor finish that penetrates a lot of the pitting that might occur. It is typically a little bit more of a durable seal. A lot of times they're made out of urethane instead of acrylics, or a urethane acrylic mix. The other option on terrazzo, the really old, what my old boss used to refer to as real terrazzo, because it was made with the cement mix and the marble chips. That floor polishes very similar to what you just saw on the marble. Almost identical process of just using a powder, and it polishes gorgeous. If you guys, anybody been to Sacramento Airport, the new terminal over there where Southwest is at? Okay. That terminal has a terrazzo floor. So you see a lot of the little chips and stuff of marble and glass that reflects the light beautifully. That is a resin terrazzo floor. It was installed in the last 10 years, and that flooring is such that with diamonds and a diamond pad system, it can be maintained. It doesn't need a coating, but it does real well with a coating if you put it on there. But you would not build it up like you would floor finish. So terrazzo floors, you don't want a heavy buildup, just like floor finish or like cement. You wouldn't. Okay, so we transition now. We've talked about stone floors a lot. Let's now jump to the other side, wood floors. How do we deal with wood floors? Our book gives us a lot of information on wood floors, and wood floors.
What's wrong?
I want to explain a little bit about them before we actually look at the actual process, and I want you guys to understand what we're talking about, because there are different types of wood floors. There's what we call true hardwood floors, and then there is engineered wood flooring. Okay, and what we talk about on a hardwood flooring is a little bit different. Is hardwood flooring, especially like a gym floor, is a lot thicker of a material. A lot of times it's going to be a wood plank that's probably in the neighborhood of about 3/4 of an inch thick of wood. And they're built in planks, usually only about 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide. And it's all tongue and groove. So each piece fits into each other. A true hardwood flooring that is installed for a gymnasium floor is designed in such a way that you can sand that and not damage the floor. It can be sanded multiple times depending on the thickness of the floor. Now, obviously, sanding is expensive, especially for a big gymnasium floor. It's very labor intensive. Not something that any of us would ever tackle, truly sanding the floor. That's where you bring in a wood floor specialist, and they would sand it. They have these big belts or drum sanders with vacuum systems because it creates a huge amount of dust. But those floors can be done that way. So when the floor, as we start talking about in this training, when that floor gets damaged to the point of scratches, or one of the biggest problems that happens is water or moisture damage to a wood floor. We ran into, give a great example, a wood floor at a university down in Turlock that had damage from two things. One, water was coming in from the outside doors because they didn't have good drainage in the doors going out. And so water was coming in, and the ends of the floor, the first 2 or 3 feet by the exterior entrances going to the outside of the gym, was damaged. It was cupped, it was warped, and the floor was damaged in that area. Second problem that occurred in this gym is their HVAC system was installed on the roof, as is typical in a large gymnasium. And when they had a leak up there and the roof leaked, guess where all that water went down to? The floor. And it completely damaged their wood flooring. So in that case, they get to a point they either need to have the wood floor replaced or sanded. Their damage was so extensive they had to have it replaced at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most of what we deal with is going to be restorative. But as I mentioned, there is a difference. There is engineered hardwood, which is typically what you would see installed in your home. And engineered hardwood is almost like a plywood type of material. And it is a hardwood on the top, but it is layered like plywood. So it does not have the ability to be sanded down and restored. That top layer is only about 1/8 of an inch thick veneer, and it's the plywood veneer. So from that standpoint, engineered hardwood that you would see installed in your home most of the time cannot be drum sanded. Old homes, if this house was built 40 or 50 years ago with old hardwood, typically is a traditional hardwood floor, and it can be drum sanded. So it's just knowing what type of floor. If it was installed in the last 15 years, it's likely engineered hardwood. So just be aware, we're talking about stuff that is typical for gymnasium floors when I'm talking about hardwood floors. So that being said, let's get into kind of the training on that. And from that, I will take you into our training on hardwood floors. And hang on one second, share my screen on that one. All right, so what we're going to cover here is really the idea, and this training was originally built for contractors or schools, how to reduce their labor cost, downtime, and still have a nice high quality finish that would last. We're going to talk a little bit about how to evaluate the floors, okay, and deal with that. Interestingly, going back here for a second, labor cost is very expensive on restoring it, but we have found that some new technologies have cut it down to we can restore a gym floor in a day to day and a half max. So a whole lot easier to do. So we'll cover a little bit about evaluation, how to identify some of the problem areas that can be repaired, the difference between wood damage and floor coating damage, things that we need to know about on maintaining that floor. We'll talk about the prep, how we prepare it for coating, and then how to recoat it. The first step, anytime you're dealing with a wood floor, is to do an evaluation of that floor. Really make sure you know what is being done and what the expectations are. So any gym floor, even if you're doing it for a school, do an evaluation. Make sure you know what you're dealing with. So what are we looking for? Some of the things that we look for is, first of all, what was used on the floor before? What kind of coating? This is important because there are different coatings that will not bond to each other. So it's really important to know the previous products. We also want to know Is there any loose or split or broken boards? Because we will not be able to fix those. Is there any cupping or crowning? Mark, go ahead.
Coming into a job that you're looking at, how do you know what was used before, keeping the products, the same and all?
Generally speaking, somebody there at the facility would know, because whether it is the previous crew that is working at that school or site or the property manager, this is something that is, it's not like floor finish where they switch easily. The cost is very expensive for these coatings, so there's a lot of records for that. So all you're worried about was the last coating, not the one before that. So, and typically most floors are recoated every 2 to 3 years. So generally speaking, ask the department manager if you're working in a school district. Usually the head custodian at the school would likely know, but definitely the manager of the department should know. They can, if none of those people know, go back to accounting and have them pull the invoices, and they can look and see what was purchased for that floor. So I always check that. And on the supply side of the business, I would not put a coating on a floor without knowing what was on it. I made that mistake one time. We didn't know what was on the floor, so we did a test. We put the test down and tested it for a few weeks. We had good bonding. It looked like our finish was going to do well on it. We put it on the floor.
He's breathing a lot.
A month later,
Irritates my ears.
I get a call from the school, and the athletic director said, "Your finish is peeling off of our floor." And they could take it and peel it. This creates a safety hazard, so they had to shut down the gym, and they were getting close to the beginning of basketball season and volleyball practice. And this was coming up on Labor Day. Labor Day weekend, and this is probably my worst Labor Day weekend of my life. We had to strip a urethane coating off this floor. And guys, stripping urethane coating is not the same as stripping floor wax. We were using scraper tools and a product that's like a paint stripper that gels on the top, and you have to let it bubble up the finish and scrape it off and scoop it up with shovels. And we had approximately 8,000 square foot of gym to redo. So it was a long weekend, and it was a hot weekend, and we worked night and day on this. My wife, and at the time I was living in Sacramento, and this was down in the valley, and I stayed down there. We stayed overnight. We slept, in our cars for a few hours, and it was just a brutal 3-day weekend. So we got it fixed, and next year they replaced the floor, thank God. So again, really critical to know that information. That leads to, is there an adhesion issue? Is there any peeling of the finish? What about the game lines? Do they need repair? We're going to talk about that. Areas where the coating is worn through, you can see this. Is there any water damage to it? Simple things like tape or gum on the floors. What about power? Do we have power for our machines? Any deep scratches or grooves in the floor? And you can even do some tests to determine, did somebody put floor wax on there? So there are some tests to be done. Again, a lot of things to check out. So that's the evaluation process. A lot of times the management will do this ahead of time. Either the custodial manager in a school district, or like in your guys' district at Elk Grove, this is a lot of the things that years ago Ruben was doing, of having to evaluate it. Now that they have a program and all the gyms are doing the same program, they're not as worried about coding issues. but they do evaluate damage. So then get the job site prepared. So a lot of things to develop. And again, I don't want to get into, you guys don't need to learn every step of this process, but you need to be aware of it as we go through it. And as I mentioned, it's important to know the difference between wood floor damage and floor coating surface damage. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So damaged wood floors, we're looking for things like broken boards. Okay, here's an image where you can see the boards there's some deep scratches here. We have damage that the edges, the boards in between are cracked or broken. If this is the case, if we have those issues, or if we have what's called cupping, if you notice how this is, the wood itself is cupping, okay, that cannot be taken care of by putting a finish on or just screening it. In fact, if we ran a screen over this, what would happen is we would end up getting just the tops of that, and we wouldn't get down into the bottom. So it's important to be able to determine what is the difference in damage. Whereas if you notice here, okay, we do have some damage, but what's happening here is we have some damage to the finish itself. You can see it in some of these marks here on the floor. And the picture doesn't show it real well, but over here on the right side, this is some damage that is occurred to the finish itself. It's not to the wood. Things like gum, tar, stuff like that, that can all be removed with just using a blade as you're going through the prep cycle. And not everything's going to come off. That's the other thing, is we have to realize that even after you completely prep the floor, deep scratches will not come out. And you can see a little bit of those scratches here on the floor. We are not sanding the floor. We're simply prepping it so that the next coating will go on. We're getting it as clean as possible, removing any scratches that are in the coating. But the wood itself, if the scratches have gone into the wood, we will not be able to remove them through normal restoration. Those have to be sanded out, which involves drum sanding. And a lot of times you deal with a certain amount where you say, okay, it's at the point it's everywhere, I have to sand it. But you want to really do that as few times as possible. I've seen gym floors last for 50, 60 years, longer even than that. So that's because they don't sand it often. Once you've sanded it about 3 times, that's about the life of that wood floor. You can't do it much more than 3 to 4 times. And some of the newer floors are even as little as 2 to 3 times. So there is some different methods that contractors can use to fix small scratches, to take a ability to maybe screen it a little bit and do a little bit of handwork on some of those. But again, if it's extensive, you're not going to be able to get it off with this process.
Yeah.
What about game lines? This is the one that, this is an example of just crazy amount of game lines. These game lines are put down there for a variety of sports. So you have basketball lines, you'll have volleyball lines, you'll have them for other sports. So because of that, in time, these lines may get worn or damaged. These can be repaired if it's not extensive. If it's extensive, then in the sanding, if it was resanded, they would come in and paint down new game lines. But most of the time, this is something that you can do in a repair process. So we'll go through, I'll explain how we would repair game lines here next. And what you'll notice is they took tape, and they put down painter's tape, and there is a special paint that is called game paint. And after the floor has been screened or floor pad where we've cleaned it and prepped it, that's when we would put the new game lines down or repair those. And then at that point, we would seal over those with our coating. So game lines are done after the floor is prepped, but before it's finished. And just a few things. It's always recommended, he's using a very thin line of tape. I always recommend using 3/4 inch wide painter's tape because I'm not that accurate. So I found I can do this with that very easily. Make sure that you have the right type of paint. If you're dealing with water-based finish, which is what we're dealing with, you'll want to use a water-based paint as well. And they need to be a glossy enamel paint. There's companies who sell these. Kelly Moore sells it, Benjamin Moore, Rust-Oleum. They all make good paint for game lines, but not something you can run down to Home Depot and buy. So you'll need to search online to find that. What else did I want to? One of the guys who taught me a lot about gym floors, he's an expert at doing game line repairs. So I'm going through some of his notes. And one of the things he brings out is that after you finish painting and the paint is tack free, then you'll remove your tape from it. It doesn't. Water-based paint does not totally bond to the floor until it's completely dry. Therefore, if you leave the tape on overnight before removing it, you run the risk of paint lines coming up with the tape. So that's why it's good to remove your tape first. Secondly, you want to make sure your paint is completely cured before you put on your coating. So if you're running into where you have to fix game lines, you'd want to do that ahead of time. You prep the floor. Now, unfortunately, you're going to have to spend more time. Yeah. Like all other floors, what is the biggest enemy of floors? Who could help me with that one? Come on, you guys know this one.
Water?
Nope, close. Biggest enemy of all floors. The reason why we use floor mats.
Dust.
Dust and sand.
Dirt.
Yep,
Oh,
dry soils. Yep. So that sand, dry dust, or soil, our biggest enemy. So what is the best way to prevent that?
Matting and regular sweeping.
Matting and regular sweeping, absolutely. A good maintenance program deals with that. Rule of 15s, right? Make sure that we have 15 feet on the exterior and 15 feet on the interior when we're having events. A lot of times, by the way, a good solution, a lot of gyms have a lobby area, and so that's where you can put a lot of your matting before they come into the gym. And don't allow entrance from back doors for that, because you'll bring in that sand. The other enemy, though, for gym floors is body oils. And I love this picture. If anybody knows or remembers what movie that's from.
Is that Dodgeball?
Yep. Dodgeball or
Yeah. Yep. So body oils are terrible for gym floors, especially if you think about all the sports that are done on them. And it creates safety hazards. The other issue is spills. So if you ever watch an NBA game, one of the things you'll notice, and you have to kind of pay attention, in between timeouts, you will see cleaning personnel cleaning with microfiber mops any body oils off the floor. And the reason being is that they want to make sure that that floor is tight. It's not going to cause a slip and fall. Spills are also a big thing, and you'll notice some gyms will say no liquids on the floor. Because one of the biggest problems is if we get spills and it gets into it, if there's a crack in the floor, because remember, each of those boards is a separate board. If there's a crack in the floor and there's a gap ever in the seal, that's where moisture will get down and you'll run into problems. So spills is another enemy. So we mentioned entrance mats protect the floor. Dust mops will remove dry soils. I'll show you a quick video in a little bit about a maintenance program, how to properly maintain that floor. Biggest thing to do for maintenance, spot mopping, damp mopping, and use of an auto scrubber. Those are fantastic ways to properly maintain it. And again, I'll show you some things in a quick video on that. So let's go over what's involved on the floor prep. Basically, this is your supply list, and I'm not going to go through all these things, but just like what you guys dealt with, the supplies of the items that need to be replaced frequently, things like grit screens, surface prep pads, towels, the chemicals. Some of these trigger sprayers wear out so quickly. Chemicals are floor cleaners. Tools are some of the equipment, mop buckets, safety items. So every time you prep a gym floor, you always need to remove all the dust and dry soils first. Get things like gum and stickers off. You'll scrub the floor, and I mentioned a piece of equipment. It's called a boost machine. That is that orbital scrubber that has a pad or screen on the floor. And this company recommended the use of grit screens and then maroon SPP pads. Depends on the coating you're working with. Some coatings only require the maroon SPP. The one video I am going to show you in a minute from Bona. Bona actually has developed a diamond pad that works really well on a floor machine and does a fantastic job. Use a green pad to get edges, corners. You want to get as much dirt and soil off of that floor and it cleaned. But the other thing you're trying to accomplish, not only getting the floor clean and residue free, but also doing what I call creating tooth. When it comes to urethane coatings, they don't like to stick to each other. The reason being they're not an ammoniated finish, okay? Ammoniated finishes do something really unique. When you use an acrylic floor finish like we use on resilient flooring, that bit of ammonia allows each coat to stick to each other. Because what it does is it softens the coat below it, so it sticks to each other really nicely. Unfortunately, acrylic coatings require strippers to be used with them, and that's why we don't typically use them on gym floors. The other problem is acrylic coatings, while very flexible and so forth, they don't last as long. They wear out very quickly. So we use urethane coatings, water-based urethanes, on wood floors. They're much harder, much more durable, but they also don't stick well to each other after they've cured out. So they will do fine in the curing process if it is applied within a few hours of each other. But if you wait overnight and that floor is completely cured, another finish doesn't want to stick on top of it. So from that standpoint, we have to scratch up the floor so it allows it to bond to each other. And that's what we're doing with these screens or floor pads, is creating scratches. The last thing that you do in the process is tack the floor with terry cloth towels to get all of the dust and debris off, and then you're ready. So when you look at this floor, you'll notice it is dull. It doesn't have any gloss. That's what a gym floor should look like, evenly dull, just like on a resilient floor. Shouldn't have any shiny spots. And then we'll recoat it with a waterborne urethane. So I'm going to come back to this presentation in just a minute. because this is a good spot for me to share with you guys a couple really cool videos that cover this process. And again, these videos are now in your class, the Google Classroom, and it is under gym floor restoration. So I've shown this other video before. I'm going to show it one time, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing. And then we're going to look at the Bona program. So they're using an automatic scrubber, which has this rectangular pad on it. And I'm going to jump ahead.
Dave, you showing that to us or?
Yeah, is it not showing?
No.
Oh, yep, let me stop it. But I didn't want to show video, so thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, so you'll see the auto scrubber here, and let me enlarge that for you guys. The auto scrubber is coming along the floor, and you can see behind it the clean path it's creating. And it's got that surface prep pad on there. And as he's going through and doing the floor, you see the difference between the shiny and the dull area. And he's walking just at a slow, steady pace. Nothing fast as we go over this. But what's nice is this is a lot of times something that can be done in just pass. You notice that's that maroon pad, much like exactly like what we used on the swing buffer, but for an orbital. And one thing he's doing here is changing his pads. You have to change your pads very frequently with doing these systems. Let me jump ahead a little bit here. So in his case, this floor needed to be done twice. So he went over all the floor one pass, and then he worked himself back over a second pass. Now this is called tacking the floor. After you've got the floor completely clean, they will take a terry cloth towel that is just wrung out so it's damp, wrap it around a push broom, and use it to get all the fine dust off the floor. We need that floor to be completely residue free. So they'll go over that floor and they'll change these pads. And you notice how they leave a trailing edge about a foot or more in length? That's because that rag, we're picking up all this dust all along it. So I'll stop right there because I don't want to share any more of their system. Go back to... We'll look at the system now from Bona. Very similar, but Bona uses, instead of maroon pads, they've now developed their own. And this one, I will turn the sound on. I'm going to let these guys narrate theirs. And give me a second here to share that one. By the way, before I start that, how many of you guys from Elk Grove School District have actually gone through Bona training on gym floors or have done gym floors?
Boner.
I've done gym floors, but I didn't go to no Bona training.
Okay. Dawn, you have gone through the Bona one?
Not through Bona training, no. I've done gym floors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amon, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
You went through a Bona training, didn't you?
With the gym floors?
Yeah.
The gym floors.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully this kind of fits in with it. I don't know if your district is using this system or not, but instead of using maroon pads, they're using a diamond pad for it, but the process is still pretty much the same. So let's just watch through their system real quick.
Recoating is a relatively simple but critical practice in the overall maintenance and management of athletic wood floors. In this video, we'll show you the most efficient and effective way to complete this important task using the Bona Supercourt Recoat system. Before starting any work, be sure to have a discussion with the client about what they should and should not expect from the recoat process. Indicate any pre-existing defects, such as damaged wood, peeling finish, paint issues, or anything else that might interfere with adhesion. Check for scuff marks and identify if they are above or below the existing finish. Any marks or blemishes below the finish cannot be removed with a recoat. Check the baseboards and surrounding areas for damage marks and dried finish from previous finish applications. Indicate to the client any pre-existing conditions that recoating will not address. Lastly, discuss with the client any chemicals that have been used on the floor in the past or might still be in use, as these could possibly affect adhesion of the recoat. After the existing floor conditions have been identified, it's time to prepare the job site and make sure you have all the materials needed to complete the recoat. Lock all doors and secure entry points to prevent unwanted foot traffic. Place signs in visible areas to indicate that the gym floor will not be accessible. Begin the cleaning process by dust mopping the entire floor with the Bona Athletic Floor Care Mop and Bona Microfiber Dusting Pad. Remove any gum, tape, soda spills, and other sticky substances you find. It is essential to remove all foreign substances and objects from the floor before moving on to the abrasion process. Anything missed could severely compromise the effectiveness of the diamond abrasives during the subsequent steps. It is important that throughout the recoat process, from abrasion to finish application, personal protective equipment be worn, including safety glasses, nitrile gloves, and in some cases, a respirator. Thorough and proper abrasion of the floor is vital to ensure adhesion of the new finish. The best and most efficient way to abrade athletic wood floors is to use the Bona multi-disc with 180 grit Bona diamond abrasives. Each set of diamond discs will last 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, so for most gym floors you'll only need to change the discs once. While abrading, move at an even pace and work with the direction of the flooring, overlapping each pass by at least 6 inches. Make sure to remove all scuff marks and any other flaws that are on the surface. All gloss or sheen on the floor should be completely removed during the abrasion process. Abrading a gym floor creates a lot of fine dust. Using the Bona Dust Containment System backvac during the abrasion process will aid in minimizing any dust left on the floor and allow for a cleaner, healthier environment for everyone involved. After abrading the entire floor with the Bona Multidisc and backvac, remove the bulk of the dust utilizing the Bona Athletic Floor Care Mop and Bona Microfiber Dusting Pan. Pay special attention to edges and baseboards where dust tends to collect. Proper vacuuming and tacking prior to finish application will ensure a cleaner, smoother result everyone will notice. Following dry dusting, clean the entire floor with Bona Supercourt Hardwood Cleaner and the Bona Supercourt Mop and Microfiber Cleaning Pad to remove any remaining dust and debris. To properly wet tack the gym floor, start by completely wetting the Bona Microfiber Cleaning Pad. To do this, submerge the pad in a bucket of Bona Supercourt Hardwood Cleaner. Wring out any excess cleaner back into the bucket. Place the Bona cleaning pad on the floor, logo side up. Adhere the Supercourt mop base to the cleaning pad by placing the mop base on top of the logo side. Run your hand along the flared edge to ensure proper adhesion of the pad to Velcro on the mop base. Push the mop up and down along the floor. Maintain the flared edge of the mop base as your leading edge during the cleaning process. When the pad becomes loaded with dust and debris, thoroughly rinse the pad and repeat the process until the gym floor is clean. Always begin with a clean Bona microfiber cleaning pad, wet and wrung out with Bona Supercourt Hardwood Cleaner. To speed up the tacking and cleaning process, have multiple Bona microfiber wet cleaning pads available. Before the application process, tape and mask all floor plates and other objects on the floor that will not be coated with finish. Prior to starting the finish process, remember to wear safety glasses and any other recommended personal protective equipment. The best way to prepare Bona Supercourt waterborne 1 and 2 component finishes is by using a drill and paddle mixer. Protect the work area from spills and splashes by working on plastic sheeting or drop cloths. Remove the lid from the bucket and insert the paddle mixer into the finish until it reaches the bottom. Mix the finish carefully and thoroughly for 1 minute. Allow the finish to rest for 5 minutes before use. If you don't have a drill...
Reason why they're doing that process, a waterborne urethane, for it to properly cure, needs what's called a catalyst. So that catalyst is basically an ingredient that's a part 2 that's added into it. It's much like an epoxy coating does the same thing. So you add this second part to it, and it's mixed in there. Once you do that, that particular pail has a amount of time before it starts to harden. Generally speaking, you only have a few hours to work with that pail. After that, the finish starts to harden up on it. So it's important that you add the catalyst, and you add it as you go along. You don't mix all your pails at once. I ran into this situation years ago with a community college where the custodian, we were doing a gym that was about 15,000 square feet. He mixed all the pails up. Worked out great until we got to the very end. And because they had been sitting there for hours, that last pail did not properly coat on the floor. It was already starting to cure before we could get it on the floor, so we had a lot of problems with it.
And paddle mixer, you can prepare the finish by rocking the bucket. Grasp the handle and make sure the lid is tightly secured to the bucket. Swing the handle back and forth for approximately
1 minute.
Approximately 1 minute. Allow the finish to rest for 5 minutes before use. Prepare the Bona Supercourt HD 2-component finish by first adding the recommended amount of water to the crosslinker, then shaking the mixture for about 10 seconds. Carefully pour the crosslinker mixture into a full bucket of Bona finish. When mixing is complete, it is necessary to strain the finish. Straining allows for easy removal of any solids that may have formed in the finish bucket for a clean, professional recoat. Repeat this process for all additional buckets needed. Finally, pour the prepared finish into the Bona Supercourt finish dispensing bucket or clean watering cans for easier application. Prepare all of the application tools by thoroughly rinsing with clean water, dry to slightly damp. Before you begin coating, it's important to have an exit plan. Of course, you don't want to trap yourself in a corner, but you also don't want to end your application in a highly visible area. Inevitably, as you work across the floor, small amounts of debris will accumulate under your applicator pad. Avoid an unsightly pile of debris in your final pass by soaking up the contaminated puddle of finish and pouring a fresh, debris-free puddle to finish the job. It's best to always finish your application out of a lesser-used doorway or exit. To help ensure proper coverage rates, place tape on the walls or surrounding floors in measured increments to indicate square footage. Another option is to stage the buckets of prepared finish at measured increments relative to the necessary coverage rates. Begin coating by pouring a 6-inch wide line of finish along the starting wall, making sure the finish is at least 8 inches away from the wall. Walking at a medium pace, gently pull the finish with an 18 or 24-inch Bona swivel head applicator, using very light downward pressure. Heavier downward pressure will spread the finish too thin. It may be necessary to pull the first line along the starting wall twice if sufficient coverage was not achieved. At the end of each run, turn the applicator toward you and pad out the applicator parallel to the wet edge. Feather out all turns. Continue this process all the way across the gym, keeping your finish lines at least 6 inches wide at all times. When you finally reach your exit point, soak up extra puddles of finish with clean rags. If necessary, pour a fresh puddle of finish and complete the application, smoothing out the finish as necessary. Allow the first coat of Supercourt waterborne finish to dry for 2 to 3 hours before applying a second coat. Remember, high humidity and cooler temperatures will extend the dry time, while high temperatures, increased airflow, and lower humidity will decrease dry times. If for any reason the first coat is left to dry for more than 48 hours, you must abrade the floor prior to applying the second coat to ensure proper adhesion. To apply the second coat and any additional coats needed, follow the same process as that of the first coat, working with the direction of the flooring, overlapping each pass by at least 6 inches and allowing sufficient dry time. Allow the final coat of Supercourt waterborne finish a minimum of 24 hours cure time before resuming use of the floor. Thoroughly wash all application tools with water and place them in airtight containers for storage. That wraps it up for the basic recoat.
So that process that we're looking at here is pretty much the same. You might use different pad system. Maybe it's the surface prep pad. Maybe it's their diamond discs. But the process is to abrade the floor, tack it to remove all the dry, any leftover material, make sure the floor is dry, and then apply a coating down. And it's usually 2 coats of finish that are put. There is a rare time where you could add a third coat. A lot of times in the area, and so I'm going to share my screen for just a second here. Those of you who play basketball know that this area here, right from the free throw line to the baseline, is called the key. So this area, this key area, those areas sometimes they will apply a first coat there before they do the rest of the floor, just because this is where it gets the most wear and damage in basketball. So a lot of places have stopped doing that, but I know of some guys who still do that just to give some extra durability there. So, okay. So we've covered how gym floors are applied. The last thing I want to address is how do we maintain them?
Process of athletic wood floors using Bona Super.
Okay. So Bona actually has a fantastic video on proper maintenance. It's about 4 minutes. And we'll discuss that. That's where we'll focus a lot of our attention here. So give me a second.
Most hardwood gym floors endure heavy use on a daily basis. It's important to take regular measures to increase their durability and to maintain their appearance. The best way to do so is with the Bona Supercourt Athletic Floor Care System. In this video, we'll demonstrate the most efficient practices.
Well, that's got some streaming issue there. Hang on.
For maintaining your hardwood gym floors using Bona's effective and sustainable system.
I'm going to pause it for just a second. Let it feed for a little bit.
The first step of the cleaning process is to remove all dust and debris from the floor. Dusting should be performed daily in order to maintain non-slippery floors and minimize the risk of scratching.
I'm going to do this. Let me reset it up here.
Just change the quality of the video. This computer can't handle it.
hardwood gym floors endure heavy use on a daily basis. It's important to take regular measures to increase their durability and to maintain their appearance. The best way to do so is with the Bona Supercourt Athletic Floor Care System. In this video, we'll demonstrate the most efficient practices for maintaining your hardwood gym floors using Bona's effective and sustainable system. The first step of the cleaning process is to remove all dust and debris from the floor. Dusting should be performed daily in order to maintain non-slippery floors and minimize the risk of scratching the finish. For this step, use the Bona Supercourt 60-inch mop and a clean Bona Supercourt microfiber dusting pad. Attach the pole to the mop base, then lay the pad flat on the floor with the logo side up. Place the mop base on top of the pad to secure it before firmly attaching the front of the pad to the Velcro on the flared edge of the mop base. Start in a corner of the gym, working back and forth across the entire floor, slightly overlapping each pass, always going with the grain of the wood. Make sure that the flared edge of the mop always faces forward. While dusting, keep an eye out for tape, gum, sticky spills, or any other residue or debris. Remove everything you find. After dusting the entire floor, remove the pad from the mop base and take it outside. Shake it thoroughly to get rid of heavy dust and debris. We recommend laundering or vacuuming the dusting pad after each use. A dry dusting pad is reusable up to 300 times. When the dusting is completed, it's time to wet tack the floor using the residue-free Green Seal certified Bona Supercourt cleaner and Bona Supercourt microfiber cleaning pads. If in an area where snow, ice melt, or salts are commonly tracked in, we recommend using the Bona Supercourt winter cleaner. Start by measuring the proper amount of cleaner using the Easy Tilt and Measure bottle. 2.5 ounces of concentrate yield 2.5 gallons of diluted cleaner. Take 2 clean Bona Supercourt microfiber wet cleaning pads and submerge them into the bucket of diluted cleaner. Wring out slightly, then place 1 wet pad on the floor, logo side up, and attach the mop base. Wet tack the floor by working back and forth over the entire gym, slightly overlapping each pass. Again, going with the grain of the wood. Make sure that the flared edge of the mop always faces forward. After each down and back pass, switch out the pads. We recommend wet tacking the floor daily. A wet cleaning pad can be laundered and reused up to 300 times. Auto scrubbing is an important part in keeping hardwood gym floors in excellent condition and should be performed once a week. For this process, use clean, accurately sized Bona Supercourt microfiber scrubbing pads. Check the drive plates on the auto scrubber to see what size pads you need. Bona's scrubbing pads come in 12, 13, and 20-inch sizes. Measure the proper amount of Bona Supercourt cleaner concentrate using the Easy Tilt and Measure bottle. A 20-gallon auto scrubber tank will require 20 ounces of concentrate. To prepare the auto scrubber for cleaning, remove the drive plate guard and remove the pads currently on the machine. Red pads, while effective for resilient floor cleaning, are not recommended for hardwood gym floors, as they are an aggressive pad that can damage the finish. Once the red pads have been removed, place the Bona scrubbing pads directly under the drive plates. Then set the head pressure and liquid flow to the lowest possible settings. Begin auto scrubbing the floor, working back and forth across the gym, slightly overlapping each pass, going with the grain of the wood. When the pads get dirty, simply flip them over and use the clean side. Using an auto scrubber on a newly installed hardwood gym floor before it has been recoated is not recommended. Check your flooring manufacturer's warranty for recommended auto scrubbing maintenance guidelines. That does it for how to maintain athletic wood floors using the Bona Supercourt Athletic Floor Care System.
All right, so in that video we saw basically dust mopping, tacking of the floor as the daily maintenance, and then auto scrubbing weekly. So if you're dealing with a gymnasium floor, great simple system. That system can be used for any gym floor. Dust mop it and tack it daily. A lot of times you can work with, if you're in the custodial department, work with the athletic directors. They will a lot of times have the students even help out with dust mopping the floors, especially for the sports teams. Basketball, right afterwards, they can have, people who are on their staff dust mop the floor. They want that floor looking good because they are looking at the safety of their students, the safety of the players. So from that standpoint, just work well with them. Every athletic director I've ever dealt with has been fantastic about working with me on the gym floors. They take pride in those gym floors. So that really wraps it up. We've covered a lot of different floors. I wanted to take the last part of this. If you guys looked at the back of your book, you notice it had a lot on troubleshooting and a lot of fantastic solutions or things to solve problems. How do we correct problems? Have you guys had a chance to look that over on the troubleshooting section? Nelson, you have. Marcus, are you shaking your head? Yep. Those of you guys who've looked this over and you've looked over problems and so forth, one of the things that stood out to me consistently as a problem is that the floor prep was incorrectly done. It leads to so many problems. So, for example, we just talked about wood floor. And when you start looking over some of the problems that an incorrectly prepared floor will lead to, one is poor finish. It could come out streaky, patchy, or rough. Okay? Poor adhesion of the coating, where the finish itself could peel or flake. These are all issues that are caused by poor floor prep. So it's critical that we get our prep done. With any job that we're doing, we want to make sure we do it right. And, preparation is the key to success of any job. When it comes to laying of coatings or finishing of floors, preparation is the most important thing. Getting it done right. When we talked about polishing of concrete, that first pass, the first grinding step, was the most important step because that's where whatever we do, we have to be able to each step remove those scratches from the previous one. So if we don't get that done and we rush through the steps, inevitably we're going to run into failure. Something's not going to look right. It's not going to come out the way we expect. So let's talk about some serious issues that could occur. If we're dealing with a resilient floor, we put on a few coats of finish and the gloss just is not where we want it to be, what we would call poor gloss. What are some of the causes of that? What might cause that problem?
Incorrectly prepare, poorly rinse, imperfect strip, dirty mop bucket, wringer,
okay,
coating the fly, not enough coating of finish on the floor. Finish may require varnish, coat or peel too soon after one another. Floor not thoroughly dry before application of finish.
Looking at that list, how many of those are involved in prep? Those causes.
At least half of them, right?
Yeah. Yep. Dirty mop buckets, ringers, that could lead to some problems. Floor not thoroughly dry before application, that's a prep issue. Okay. That it was poorly rinsed or improperly stripped. Remember how I told you we don't want to see shiny spots? About 15 years ago, I was down in Long Beach, and we were calling on a school district down there, and walked in, and they had a large multi-purpose room, about 5,000 square feet. So it's a pretty big multi-purpose room. And it was old VCT floor, and it was old floor. The floor was wavy. I can look across that floor, and they had just finished stripping it. And there was 3 or 4 people out working on it. I'm looking at this floor, and you could just see the shiny spots. I could tell instantly they're going to have a problem with that finish. It's not going to look right. So that's going to lead to poor gloss. It might even lead to an adhesion issue. So important that they do it. What are some solutions? Let's look at the improper prep. So who can help me with some of the solutions specifically tied to preparation?
Clean equipment.
Okay, let's do, Tony, you do a couple, then Don, you do a couple.
Okay, so clean equipment, following those labels, manufacturing instructions.
Okay. How about you, Don?
Rinse thoroughly.
Yeah, big one. Make sure we get the residue. You know, a simple test you could do after you've stripped a resilient floor? Take your hand and run it across the floor. If you take your hand off that floor and it's clean, your floor is ready to go. But if you do and there's a white powder on it, your floor is not ready. It's got residue. Get that off of there. Rinse it again, and that's where neutralizer can help. Okay? If you don't have some neutralizer, use a little bit of neutral cleaner. That can help. But get that water, get it really rinsed off goodly. Good. So just a good proper rinsing. What about the case of drying? Because it says floor not thoroughly dried before application or finish. What's a simple solution you can use for that? Nelson.
What's that, blower fan?
Put a blower, air mover on it. Get that floor dry. Okay, now another one that occurs is stickiness. Stickiness is a bad one. Look over on page 125. What can cause stickiness on a floor?
Floor is not completed strip of old build-up stripper before finish the application. Use a dirty mop bucket, wringer bucket, and other tools. Finish coat, apply too thick. Second coat of finish, apply too soon after the first.
Stickiness problems occur because people who are doing the floor don't know what they're doing. Okay. They rushed through the job. It wasn't properly stripped. Dirty equipment. But this one here, finish coats applied too thick, or second coat of finish applied too soon after the first. I don't know if I shared it with you guys or my other class, but I had an incident occur over in Oakland. So if you guys know the Oakland Bay Bridge, before it was the new bridge was set up there. Well, actually, it was after that. There is an area there just past the toll booths where they have a large area where all the tow trucks come in, and they have their own tow truck services that they contract for to clear any accidents or any stalled vehicles off the bridge quickly. And that's where they pull them to, is on the Oakland side of the bridge, so that they don't tie up traffic. Where that's at, there's a lounge area for the tow truck drivers. And so they have their own janitorial service that works for a special unit called the Bay Bridge Authority, and it's the authority that oversees all of the bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area. So that area of floor is old VCT. And this was going back about 10 years ago. I had arranged to do a training with that crew, and we were going to do the training the following week. The manager got impatient. He decided, man, we've got a nice weather patch this weekend. We're going to do it over the weekend. So he calls me up on Friday night at about 7 o'clock and says, Dave, don't worry about coming in on Monday to do the training with us. We're going to get it done this weekend. On Monday morning, I got a call from him and says, Dave, I need you to come out here. We have a problem. And as soon as I walked on that floor, the first thing I felt was stickiness. Okay. The next thing I found is I walked around the corner into an area where they had the break area where they had the microwave oven and the sink and everything else. And there was streaks on the floor that looked like mop marks. That was caused, and if you look at the stickiness and then you look at streaking, okay, they both say second coat applied too soon after first coat. It's not last thing. They were in a hurry. Okay, and they're being in a hurry. What ended up happening is that as they mopped it on and they rushed their coats, it started to grab a hold. And if anybody has ever painted over wet paint, you'll notice what it does is that it'll start to do it, especially if the paint is just starting to tack up, it'll start to drag. And that's what it looked like, was these drag marks of mop marks. On top of that, one of the things that we also are told is it says under streaking, finish applied too thick or too many coats applied in a 24-hour period. In this case, it wasn't that it was too thick, it was too many coats. They did over 5 coats. I think they did 6 or 7 coats that same day. And they didn't allow the moisture to cure out of the finish, because when we talked about how floor finishes are made, remember they have the VOCs in it, the organic compounds, those VOCs that evaporate off, and the solids is what's left behind. Well, if you stack too many finishes on top of each other and you don't allow them to dry properly, what ends up happening? It traps that moisture inside of it. That's what caused more of the streakiness and more of the stickiness. So they rushed through the entire process. The result, guess what they had to do? What do you guys think?
Redo it again?
Redo it again. So guess what? We still ended up doing the training because we showed them, you guys get this floor stripped. They knew how to strip the floor. They had done a fine job getting it stripped, but now we had to reapply it, and we had to take time properly applying it. What you guys did was great. You did a nice thin coat, and thin coats are better. Thin to medium-sized coats. Never go real thick in your coating. And make sure you always allow enough dry time. One helpful tip when you're laying finish, if you put an air mover on it, wait until it's set up about 10 or 15 minutes and always tilt it up in the air. All you're doing is circulating the air. If you give it about 10 or 15 minutes, a film is set up on it, and so now it's not going to cause any ripples, but it'll do a good job. Another problem that can occur is something that's called poor durability. You just put the floor finish on, and within just a matter of weeks or months, the floor looks terrible. What could cause poor durability? Give a couple different things. Nelson, you've answered a few, so let's let somebody else do. You guys see that on page 125?
Incorrect dilution ratio.
Okay. So what are we talking about? Incorrect dilution ratio. You guys learned about dilution ratios already. What would be an example of that?
2 week.
2 week?
2 week led to Yeah, too weak or too strong.
Yep.
Yeah.
If we go too strong with the chemical, we can start to attack the finish. And so we start to soften it up, especially if we're using a cleaner that's a little higher alkalinity. Maybe if it has a pH of 7.5 to 8.5, we start to make it too strong, and we can do that. So you have to be careful that you mix your chemical properly. There's another one that goes hand in hand with dilution ratio when we're talking about the chemical.
Incorrect chemical?
Yeah, using the wrong chemical. Early on in your guys' first book, in the introduction to that book, it makes a statement that the wrong chemicals can damage finishes. It can cause problems. That's exactly it. We use the wrong chemical. Maybe we use too strong of a chemical, too high of an alkaline. We can damage the finish, and it's going to cause that finish to wear off quickly, because what's happening is we're softening it up, and now the finish isn't performing properly. One other thing that I'll point out on floor finish, and then we'll kind of move on away from floor finishes, is one of the issues or solutions in relation to powdering. It talks about stay with the system for a total floor care provided from one manufacturer. Now, we saw that with the video we just watched, Bona floor care system, right? When you work with a manufacturer and you use their system, they are going to back you up on that system. So, for example, you use their finish, use that same company's floor cleaner. Use the recommended system that they have outlined, because they're designed to work well together. There's not enough savings to go cheap. You maybe put on a good floor finish, but then you go cheap with your floor cleaner, and then you notice my finish isn't holding up real well. Well, did you follow that manufacturer's floor system? That's all helpful. So those are some very good things. I want you guys to, this pages here, these are golden tools. You have no idea how valuable these few pages are at the end of this book. You will reference this for years to come in your career as floor technicians, as you are dealing with janitorial, because it deals with a lot of issues. For example, wood floors, poor adhesion of coating, that peeling or flaking. First thing it mentions is floor prep. Was it prepped? And notice what it says. The solution: completely remove the coating and start over with a clean floor. Yeah, been there, done that. Don't want to do that, guys. So this tool will help you. I have a good friend of mine. He works for a chemical company. Their role in the industry, in the janitorial industry, is they are the guys who are the fixers. When everything else has failed, you call them. And when you call them, their guy is going to know the solution, because he's been doing this for about 30 years, like myself. He's got a team of people who've been doing it a long time, and he works hand in hand with the chemist. They have, this guide is just a big part of what they do. And they look at it, and he'll go out and do some basic tests, and he can say, yep, you didn't do this. And he'll ask you a ton of questions. Did you do this in your steps? Tell me the process you used. And then he'll identify what was the problem, and then what is the solution. And he'll give you a solution. Guaranteed, if there is a solution, even if it means removing the old finish, he's going to give you a solution. So they're the experts. And it's funny, I've been working in this business you guys know a long time. These guys are the go-to. And it seems like everywhere I've worked, they call them up because they know their stuff. So, and I worked for them for 5 years. Their training is the most intensive training I've ever gone through because it goes through every bit of the chemicals. You spend time testing and learning how these chemicals work in relation to each other. So, fantastic tool. So, more than anything, I would just want you guys to be aware of how to use this. When you have a problem, identify what the problem is, look at what the cause might be, and then specifically, what is the solution? I always recommend, just like in any other repair or any other troubleshooting, start with the simplest problem first, okay, or the simplest cause and solution. Is it the chemical? Look at your tools. Then look at the seal that was put on. I will tell you, it is almost never the fault of the finish that you put down. There's too much testing that goes into it. And it doesn't matter who the company is that makes the finish. It's really not going to be a problem with the finish had a problem. It's going to be a problem in the prep. 99% of the time, it's the prep. So, all right. Last part of this, I'll stop our recording and just kind of a open session of Q&A.
Recording stopped.
Any questions you guys have? We've covered a lot in the last 2 weeks on floors. A lot more than you probably even thought we would cover on floors.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you guys are seeing in the testing, a lot of detail on this stuff in the tests. As I mentioned, I am available to help out with your testing because I know this is a lot more intense. I've got my stuff I'm wrapping up today to make sure I can answer it because I have a number of them that I don't have the answers in the form of where is it in the book. So, Dawn, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to answer Mark's question from earlier about the test. That question he was looking for, the answers on page 15 at the bottom. So that one was a hard question for me to find too. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I want to tell you guys, I was so impressed with how you guys are helping each other on that. What was the question, Mark, by the way, on that? Remind me.
I believe that was a clarity. Is that correct? Is that the one you're talking about, Don?
Yes, the clarity.
69.
Yeah, it's at the bottom of page 15 where it starts with floor film something. I can't remember the title of it. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Any other questions you guys have? All right. So there is not homework for today except for work on your testing. I will tell you this week, you guys need to begin reading over lesson 2, which we move into carpet cleaning. And if you remember, on carpet cleaning for maintenance, it was pretty simple, right? The maintenance of carpet involved, entrance matting, the use of vacuums, and carpet spotting. We will deal with that, but we're also going to get into how carpet is made. We'll get into the process of restoring it. How do we clean it? And as a reminder, on the 15th, so not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, we do have a hands-on portion back over at Gerber. So that is May 15th will be our carpet cleaning, and there will be covering 2 methods of carpet cleaning there. And then on the 22nd, we'll have our last hands-on session, and that will cover the window cleaning and above floor cleaning areas. So I'm trying to get a guest to join us, a guest or two for that last session from a manufacturer. I've got one that does some really cool tooling for above floor cleaning with high dusting equipment, and another one that's got some awesome stuff with regards to window washing. So I have invites out to both of them. Hopefully they'll be able to make it for that Saturday. So I'll confirm that by the end of the week. All right. That wraps up today's class. I will have the recording posted this afternoon, and we'll keep moving. Mark. You're muted, Mark.
Are we to turn in the dilution ratio? I seen you posted something about something.
Do that. Yep. If you please get that turned in. Again, it was a tool to help you guys. So there was a page on dilution ratios and another one on coverage rates. Yep. And I will, those of you who've turned it in, I think I got 5 of them already turned in. I will get those graded and submitted back by this evening. So I've got that on my to-do list to do this afternoon.
All right.
Okay. Cool. Last thing to also address is working on final project. I know a lot of you guys, your thinking is on your test right now, which is great. And that seems to be kind of a big part of our focus. But also we're working on those final projects. So to that extent, I will make time. It's built into our schedule for Wednesday to have a breakout room session. Okay. So we're going to try and do a couple different breakouts every day moving forward. So any other questions, or did you guys want any time to work as a group here for a few minutes, sharing information like you did on Friday? Are you all good?
I guess we are trying to recuperate for the weekend.
No worries. All right. You guys have a good Monday. You know, we're back in here, and I appreciate everybody for class. So with that, I'll wrap up class, and I will see everybody on Wednesday.
Thank you. You have a nice day.
All right. See y'all.
Bye, guys.